everyone, it's Unit 13 here on scene at the Homestead, and I want to share with you another one of my self-reliance essentials projects. It's a Harbor Freight gas welding cart converted into a firefighting cart, an all-purpose firefighting cart. The idea for the firefighting cart isn't new. I've seen firefighting carts all throughout my years. But what inspired this one was a trip to Harbor Freight. And I went in there to see what they had and was surprised to see this cart. The cart completely looked like a firefighting cart to me. Outfitted with, I could just see it outfitted with fire extinguishers and some basic fire equipment. What I did then is, I didn't buy it that day. I went home and I gave it some thought. I had to get measurements on actual extinguishers and the cart itself. Once I realized I could do what I could do, and I was able to find the hardware that I did, I went and located the hardware, purchased that, and the cart. Once I got the cart home and assembled, I decided to see how many doorways I could fit it through and how difficult it might be to maneuver through a house or somewhere where there's kind of confined space, and quickly realized that those axles stuck out quite a bit farther than they actually needed to and prevented me from moving that cart into certain areas because the wheel well base was too wide. As you can see in these in this photograph here's the right wheel. Look at that amount of space. And then here's the left wheel, an equal amount of space. Once I realized the cart wasn't going to fit into all these doorways, I decided to cut the axle so that those wheels just missed the frame of the cart. That way I could have the most minimal wheelbase possible on them and still have a good functioning cart. I took it out to the old improvised shop in the garage there and took the axle off. I ground the welds of those, look like washers that were on the axles. There were two on each side. Ground those off, cut the axle down, and then, since I don't have much equipment, I just use pipe solder. And I soldered those Harbor Freight washers that came on the axle back on. I only put one of them on, just so it would have just enough space to clear that frame. Cleaned up the soldering spots, and I went back as far as I thought was necessary on that metal to make it nice and clean, so I could paint that and make it look nice, so that it didn't just have all that exposed metal. I chose a Rust-Oleum paint here, and I cleaned and degreased those spots like you're supposed to, primed them, and painted it. And when I did that, the paint or the primer crinkled the Harbor Freight paint that was on there. I don't know a lot about painting, but certainly there was some kind of chemical reaction. So just be aware of that. If you go to do something like this and you use that Rust-Oleum paint on there, it'll probably crinkle up the Harbor Freight paint. Once I got the axle painted, it was time to install it. As I said, there's close tolerances, so I just let those washers rest right against the, or close to the frame there. install these wheels. All that's holding that wheel on there is that compression cap. And it's mostly decorative, isn't it? It does hold it on there, though. Nice and pretty and shiny, huh? And then here we go with what it looks like. Nice and close. Here is the left side. Look at that. Nice tight fit there. Here's the right side. Nice and tight fit there. It's just far enough away from the frame to not touch it, which makes it perfect to fit through most of these door frames now. After I checked the axles for fit and to make sure that the wheels would roll well, the next thing to do is I took them off. I took the wheels off, and then I got the track ready. Started working on that scuba track, which is designed to mount the tank brackets. It's really easy to work with. It's aluminum. I just used a wire brush to clean up some of the square stock that I was working with, and also those tank brackets. Next thing to do was pre-drill the holes, and also, as you'll notice here in this little section, that I also countersunk it. I wanted countersunk screws that had oval heads. That way it would act as a stop to help keep that bracket from sliding all the way out if it started to move along that track. And it seems to work really well. Here it is visible in this section of video. That went well. But then when I started to test the extinguishers that I'm going to keep on the lower section of this cart, I discovered a major problem. They're very difficult to get out of the cart. Very difficult. And what they need is shown by the red arrow there, is a fulcrum point. Watch this. It's very difficult to get out of there. You can see another angle of it here. See, it's not as easy as it looks. So to solve that problem, I measured over from once the tanks were in there, I just measured over, used some of that square stock, and I took some aluminum rivets because it would be a nice flat surface, and used aluminum rivets to attach that to the base, as you can see here. That way there's nothing protruding, and they shouldn't catch on anything. To make the square tubing work as a stop, it needed to be stacked. 3/4 wasn't high enough. So what I did is I took the last piece of square stock that I had left, cut it in half, drilled a couple of pilot holes in it, and used those pilot holes to use self-tapping screws to attach it at the point where it was needed. And that addressed the problem. The only thing I don't like is I ran out of plugs and caps, or both plugs for it. I don't have any end plugs or plugs for those holes, so it looks kind of crappy. But it works. It's not pretty, but it works. And as you can tell from this footage here, it's really done what it's supposed to. It comes out so much easier. Plus the additional weight on there really helps. Seeing this close up, how much difference it makes. It just comes straight out. The next issue to solve is where the red arrow is showing there is the thickness that's added to the cart frame when the brackets, the tank brackets and that track are put together and then screwed to the front of it. What happens with the square stock there, it can only be put out so far into the front, and when the upper extinguishers are put on top, they want to stick out beyond that farthest square tubing where the arrow's pointing, because of the curvature of that front part of the frame there where you can see that arrow pointing. So what has to happen to account for that is we need something to cantilever out over those square tubing to help hold the upper extinguishers in balance. To solve that problem, what I did is just use some flat stock, just wide enough to hold those two pieces, the two extinguishers in place. They were riveted down so that there would be a smooth surface. Here's a side view of the finished upper section. The tank brackets, the track, and then the rear or the lower stop there to keep the extinguishers from tilting out or popping out the back as they're being pulled out of the front. And then the riveted cantilevers. See how everything works together there? Here's a quick view of that back support and how it's mounted. Side view of the upper extinguisher in there, and it's not as visible in this photo as it is this one. See how the extinguisher is flush against the back of the bracket? Before the cantilevers, the extinguisher would tilt and rest against the front of the bracket. After the cantilevers, that immediately stopped that. That last photo left us a great profile image of the self-leveling side tray there that it pivots off this. There's two pins. One is shown here with the arrow. If you put two 5-pound fire extinguishers in there and try to move that cart, it'll dump them straight out onto the floor. So what I'm going to do is take that off, grind the pins off of there, and then fix that tray into a stationary position so it won't move, and it'll hold those contents. It took a few minutes of grinding to get those welds off, but the pins came out. Once I got the pins out, it was a matter of doing the same thing, using the wire brush to clean up the area, priming, then painting it. After the paint dried, it was time to install those brackets again. This time I switched out the galvanized nuts and bolts for stainless steel, and then once I got the brackets in place, I went and pre-drilled holes for the nuts and bolts to hold the tray in place. Once that was in place, as visible in this photo here, there was protruding threads. So I went down and ground all of those smooth so there was no way for them to catch on anything or cut someone or something. With the tray now full of 5-pound fire extinguishers and a fire blanket, that leaves only one space on the cart to store items, and that's directly behind the CO2 fire extinguishers on the upper level. So what I decided to do with that was create a mesh bag out of scuba mesh. The bag will be removable for maintenance purposes, but I feel like that this would be the best option. You can see what's in there, and at a glance know that it is in there, and it also won't collect dust and dirt and debris down inside of it. Once I decided on the measurements, I laid it out on the frame, drilled the holes, and then installed it. Once I got it installed, of course I started to run a test, and this is the results of the test. That's not good. That's not good at all. Something has to be done about that. So I measured up for a couple of little Velcro straps there and installed it on the back support bar. We can't have that net bag holding us up in an emergency. Here's what it looks like when it's set in place. Okay, let's go back and see what it was like again before we put the tabs on. About 6 seconds here. What a difference. What a difference that makes. I'll take that over that frustrating 6-second method any day. The next thing to add to the cart is some reflective conspicuousy tape. This off-the-shelf stuff here. And a few of these custom decals that are also reflective I had made for the project. I just went ahead and put them on like I normally do a decal. I put a little bit of water down there to make the decal easy to move around for myself and place it where I want it, then squeeze all the water out, and it usually works pretty good for me. I had a little trouble with the Maltese cross design there. The lettering was really fine in some areas and came off on the backer. I had to use a pair of tweezers to put it in place. I also had to press out a couple air bubbles here and there, I think, on the tape. Other than that, it went really well, and to me, it looks pretty good. I like that look of that black and yellow diagonals on there. Look really good with that yellow medallion. Here's a demonstration of the reflectivity tape and why I put it on there. It makes things so much more visible and easy to find. If you get the slightest amount of light reflecting on it, it makes it easy to see. It's really worth having. Next on the list is a place to hang a helmet. I don't want to really use any of this stuff without a pair of gloves, some type of jacket, and a helmet and face shield to protect myself. So I'd like to have something on the cart. I thought about different types of hooks, and I really wasn't happy with anything until I came across these Velcro cord wraps. It seems like they're not a good idea, but the good part about it is that it actually holds it, but it's really flimsy. If I pull hard enough on that helmet, it'll just unloop on its own. So to me, that's a benefit. I can just pull on it and have it ready to put on my head in a moment's notice. Time for the water cans. I really like these for a lot of different firefighting situations, which is why I keep them on hand. They're great for those small fires and quick access. They are, though, a pain in the butt to carry around by the integrated handle on it. It's very awkward sometimes with the water sloshing around the way it is. If you could carry it sideways, seems like it's always better. So what I've added is one of these scuba tank cylinder handle carriers, so that it can be carried horizontally. And in addition to that, I've added an adjustable buckle and a quick release buckle to some 7-bar seatbelt webbing to create a quick to don either shoulder harness to carry this can by shoulder, or you can carry it by hand horizontally by the scuba tank handle. In these two short videos, I have a wildland turnout coat on and a structural fire helmet with a shield on it, full shield. It's easy to see that if I wanted to just throw this over my shoulder and clip it on quickly and move on, I could, or if I wanted to carry it horizontally by the handle, that would be no problem as well. This has worked out really good. Okay, the last thing to construct for the project is a fire extinguisher sign. I looked all over for a triangular fire extinguisher sign, and I could not find one. I decided to make one out of 3 flexible plastic glow-in-the-dark signs that were pre-punched. I thought it would be pretty easy to zip tie them together, take a couple pieces of triangular shaped cardboard, hot melt glue those things in there, and then take and use that to put the driveway marker post into, so that I would have something to mount it with. I used hot melt glue in there, and when I did, I realized that using a steel rule to hold the side of that sign against the cardboard would work really well. Otherwise, the sign would want to pull away from the cardboard, and all of the hot melt glue wasn't coming into contact with it. And the other good part is it kept my fingers out of that hot glue. Once I was finished, I inserted the driveway marker post from the top of the sign down through the bottom, and when it came out through the bottom, I used 2 O-rings to hold the sign in place. It doesn't need it in terms of weight, the 2 O-rings, but there's 2 in case one of them breaks. That way there's a backup in place. Now once I got the sign mounted to the post, the next issue to figure out was how to mount it to the cart. All the years ago I saved these clips from a rope light set. I never thought I would use them for something, but here it is. They've come very handy to mount that driveway marker post. It fits really well. I put some O-rings in there to help make it a little bit more stable, but it's completely breakaway. If it strikes like a doorway or something, it'll just push out of those clips. If nothing else, it'll break them. They're flimsy enough that they'll break, which is perfect. Also, it needs to be quick to remove that sign, because I've noticed if the sign's in place and I want to move that cart, that sign's directly in your face. So if it's need the cart quick access and it needs to be moved, I would just pull that sign off there, drop it down on the ground, and then take off with the cart. Okay, all the construction's done, everything's in place. Now it's time to load it up with the extinguishers and other firefighting gear. I start off with these water cans. They have no special nozzle or chemicals, just water, something that can be refilled here at the house, or just about anywhere you can find compressed air and water. I can't think of a better fire extinguisher to have on hand. Those with a sharp eye will notice that the 2 10-pound carbon dioxide extinguishers need to be serviced. Now that that's been said, you can notice how well these things fit. They're nice and difficult to get in, but when you go to pull them out, they come out really easy. And I have really these in mind for 2 specific incidents. One would be to help stop a vehicle that you're having that's been in an accident, or I should say any kind of engine that's out of control, that's a combustion engine. This might be able to shut the engine down, but the first reason I have it is for a burning human being. I can't think of anything better than to use as an extinguisher than a CO2 extinguisher or a fire blanket, but my choice would be that extinguisher, and certainly not water or dry chemical. That's why the CO2 is there mostly. However, it is a BC extinguisher. Time for some personal protective equipment. One of the things I have in there is a couple pair of those Harbor Freight welding gloves. They're not for firefighting, but they're perfect for fire extinguisher firefighting operations, that's for sure. Along with that, I have a wildland jacket that will provide some flash protection. If you have some flames blow over you, it'll keep your clothes that you happen to have on under it from just catching on fire. And you can also get in closer. If you had some undergarments that weren't all that flame resistant but thick, you could get in closer to a fire and be more effective with like a water can or another fire extinguisher, an ABC fire extinguisher. It's a larger size, so it can be used by multiple individuals, and it's been recycled from a previous job. The helmet is it seems like almost brand new structural helmet. The shield didn't have a scratch on it. It has the suspension system in there is a ratcheting system so that it can be used by multiple individuals. It's set up for that specifically. Inside one of the coat pockets, there is a military surplus fire-resistant hood that can be used for either personal protection or offering to an individual who may need it to evacuate for some other purpose to protect their head from flames or embers. I like this fiberglass blanket. It's 6x8. It's enough to wrap around a human being completely so that if they were on fire, you could smother that fire. Or it's enough to cover someone so that if flames were getting close to them, or they needed protection from radiant heat in some way, or some other type of situation, that could be very handy to use. It seems like to me it would have multiple uses. The gloves and jacket are loaded. Now it's time to put the 5-pound dry chemical extinguishers on board. As I load this, it's evident why I put that tray in a fixed position. As soon as I loaded those dry chemical extinguishers on there, for sure it would have tipped out. A nicely folded fiberglass blanket and a helmet attached. We've got a firefighting kit. It's ready to go. There it is, set up and ready to go. Ready to respond to fires on the homestead. Hopefully we never have any. The project costs were $474 and some change. That will rise as I attempt to fix the flat tire issue that's ongoing with it. Could involve buying new tires and installing a new axle. I'm not sure yet. Haven't got that far. Also, throughout the video, there are several timestamps that pop up. I did that on purpose, so there was an accurate accounting of what time and day it was. Overall, the project was really fun to do. I like doing things like this. Some of the things aren't up to my quality standards because I'm not in a shop and don't have access to all the tools that I'd like to. However, this tool is let's say this little fire engine is very functional for the purpose that I intend it for. The next steps will be to figure out how to get those tires repaired, either replace or repair them, and to put the fiberglass blanket in some type of bag that it can be easily accessed, but it keeps the dust off of it. In addition to that, I'm also thinking about using some of those disposable clear ponchos as a dust cover and a rain cover for it, just to keep it in a room stored, because it gets very, very dusty, and it's a real challenge to keep clean and clean it once it is dirty. The surprise find was the roll control system for scuba tanks. That worked out way better than I expected for both those water cans and those CO2 extinguishers. If I've forgotten anything, I'll put it in the blog that accompanies this or add it later. Same thing for any updates that will be included in the blog, or maybe there'll be a separate video. This is Unit 13. I'm out.
Engine 17, you're responding 2100 Woodmont Boulevard, across the Valley Brook Road, Woodmont Baptist Church, General Fire Alarm.